Welcome everybody to this memorial tribute to the life of Sidonie Brenner. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our guests, Mr. Keiichi Inamine, former governor of Okinawa Prefecture, Professor Osamu Shimizu, former Director General of Okinawan Affairs in the Cabinet Office, and former Director General of the Okinawan Development and Promotion Bureau, Professor Yoshihiro Otsuji, former Deputy Director General of the Okinawan Development and Promotion Bureau, member of the Cabinet Office, Dr. Hiroko Sho, former Vice Governor of the Okinawa Prefecture and former member of the Board of Governors, and of course all members of the Board of Governors and the Board of Councillors. Dr. Jonathan Dorfan, former President of the OIST Graduate University, and several speakers will contribute and pay tribute to Sidonie's life. We will have a recollection from Mr. Koji Omi, Chairman of the STS Forum and member of the OIST Board of Governors, Mr. Mitsuhiro Miyakoshi, Minister of State for Okinawan and Northern Territories Affairs, will be represented by Mr. Yasushi Noto, Director General, Okinawa General Bureau Representative. Mr. Denny Tamaki, Governor of Okinawan Prefecture, will be represented by Mr. Tameichi Nagahama, Research and Development Liaison Officer. Sir Tim Hunt, Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine, visiting scientist at OIST. Robert Bachmann, OIST Executive Vice President for Technology Development and Innovation, as well as Vice CEO. Dr. Daniel Roxar, Molecular Genetics Unit at OIST and University of California in Berkeley. And finally, last but not least, Dr. Jerry Murray, the chair of the OIST Board of Governors. We are here today to pay tribute to Sidonie Brenner, who passed away on April 5th, 2019, at the age of 92. Some people watch history. Others, like Sidonie, make it happen. With Sidonie's passing, the world has lost one of the most remarkable, witty, and hardworking scientists of the late 20th century. Well, to be precise, he was working exceptionally hard also 20 years into the 21st century. Sidonie would have appreciated the truth. One of his unfailing pieces of advice to scientists, young and old, was do the best experiments you can and always tell the truth. That's all. Another was to stand up for all humanity. Sidonie stood up for the world through the undeniable impact of his scientific work. His 70-year career witnessed the birth and growth of molecular biology. He was involved from the very beginning. As he told it, 3 discoveries laid the foundation for his early scientific interests. The first was the revelation by Fred Sanger in 1953 that proteins had a chemical structure, a sequence of amino acids. The second was the unveiling of the fine details of the gene by the elegant experiments of Seymour Benzer using bacteriophages. Next was the discovery of the structure of DNA by Watson and Crick in 1954. Indeed, Sidonie was one of the first people to see Watson and Crick's model of the DNA. Imagine the excitement for a young, curious scientist to see the whole world opening up because of the implication of the double helix structure. Genes could perhaps be read, and maybe there was a code. In 1956, Sidonie moved to the United Kingdom from South Africa to start his research career. He did most of his work on molecular genetics at the Cavendish Unit and the renowned MRC Laboratory of Molecular Biology. In his own words, of course, in the early days, we knew everybody already, because the whole world of molecular biology began as a very tiny group. In Cambridge, he shared an office with Francis Crick for many years. It was not a quiet place, and there was often loud, raucous laughter. Energy, curiosity mixed in with healthy helping of egos. It was blindly obvious that Sidonie Brenner was brilliant. 3 discoveries in his career are truly exceptional. You could call them Sidonie's Big 3. In 1961, Brenner, Barnett, and Watts-Tobin revealed the triplet genetic code by elegant experiments with mutants of bacteriophage. 3 nucleotide bases were elegantly shown to correspond to 1 amino acid. It is fair to say that 1961 was a vintage year. As if the triplet code were not enough, Sidonie, François Jacot, and Matt Messelson's proved the existence of messenger RNA, the all-important messenger molecule of the cell. Like many of Sidonie's achievements, this paved the way for a slew of other discoveries, opening up whole new areas of research. He quickly moved on to his next challenge. Sidonie wanted a higher organism where he could look at how genes control development and behavior. He settled on the nematome worms, C. elegans, thinking that its less than 1,000 somatic cells would prove to be a valuable tool for the scientific community. It proved a boon to other researchers. In a relatively short time, its complete nervous system was mapped by microscopy. The sequence of the nucleotides in its genome soon followed. The C. elegans scientific community thrives today, which says much for the vision of Sidonie Brenner. In 2002, late in his career, he would win the Nobel Prize for that work. I was told that he first heard the news that he had won the prize at Munich airport. His comment apparently was, "It's about time." That was Sidonie as well. Sidonie was not one to get caught up in hyperbole. He always maintained a healthy skepticism for big science and genomics. At heart, he was a geneticist, pure and simple. To quote him, genetics is the master science of biology. In fact, it's the only science, and all others are ways of getting to understand what the genes do. Genetics was and is the best route to understanding function. Molecular biology and biochemistry are for mechanism, for who binds to whom and how. But one also wants to know why and for what purpose, and this is what genetic investigation can tell you. Sidonie was enthralled by the idea that life could be distilled down to one dimension. In fact, he said, there has been only one quest, the quest to find out how organisms are encoded by their genes, to study that unique property of biological systems that distinguishes them from all other complex natural systems. They contain an internal description of themselves. The rest of Sidonie's scientific discoveries are not bad either. He taught himself how to use computers in biology at a time when it was distinctly unfashionable to do so. This was typical Sidonie. If you wanted to learn something new, get a book, read it, and get on with it. He made many contributions to the theory and practice of DNA sequencing. So what about Sidonie as a person? I first met Sidonie because he was an external scientific member of the Max Planck Institute of Biophysical Chemistry in Göttingen, the institute where I worked as a director ever since the mid-80s. Back then, we published a paper together on the PAC6 gene. If PAC6 is defective, mice as well as humans lack a functional eye. Pure genetics, I should say. He liked it. Together we showed that control elements for this gene were unchanged throughout evolution in different vertebrates. Hence, the hierarchy of control events must have been conserved. We also shared time together on scientific advisory boards such as A-STAR in Singapore, where he was the chairman. What really struck me was his commitment to global science and international projects. For any new undertaking, he always wanted to start with the science, get it going quickly and in the right direction. He was equally at home in Asia, Europe, or the United States, a world citizen, modest in lifestyle. His was not the world of fast cars, large houses, or superstar science. He was more at home with a good book and a cup of tea. Gifted with words, equally sharp in thought. He could be disturbingly to the point and sometimes had harsh comments for sloppy thinking. That said, he was very supportive of younger scientists and a champion of improving the lives of those, I quote him, slaving away in the laboratories of their so-called chieftains. He derided many graduate schools as a kind of slavery and saw keeping research labs bubbling with new ideas as critical to maintaining the health of the discipline. As Sidonie astutely noted, young people go where there is a challenge. And they're the ones you really want to have, the ones that go where you can do something new and get excited. To back this up, he generously made several donations to help the students at OIST. Sidonie was certainly an individual. You were more or less on your own if you wanted to be successful in his laboratory. Hands-on management was not his style. He was always too busy forging his own intellectual path. He strongly disliked administration. His time in charge of the prestigious Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge was not the happiest time from his personal recollection. In his own words, "I'm not a good administrator, rather hopeless." People in those kinds of jobs mediate between two impossible groups, namely the monsters above and the idiots below. Vintage Sidonie. In his own words, what I enjoy most is the opening game. Once it gets past that point, I get bored with it and want to do other things. Science was his life, his hobby, and his calling. He preferred to be in the front line, leading the intellectual change. He had a remarkable recall of historical events, and he would speak unaided by slides with great eloquence for as long as he was welcome. Master of science, purveyor of wit, raconteur. Sidonie loved a good story and an audience. In the late 90s, he wrote the Loose Ends column for Current Biology. In the words of his editor at the time, some of the finest and wittiest popular writing by a scientist in the 20th century. He would often mock and make fun of others, but you could forgive easily, since it seemed to be a sign of respect. It was just like Sidonie to put his name to OIST when it was only an idea. By doing so, he helped OIST to make OIST a reality and ensure that it would be a project of the highest caliber. In accepting the role of its founding president, he guaranteed a foundation that would lead to accreditation of a new type of university, one that would be international, free of disciplinary boundaries, and committed to the very best science. Sidonie showed that OIST could be the best in the world from the start. He established the resources and attracted scientific innovators and pioneers who set the standards for what OIST is today. In recognition of his efforts at OIST, the government of Japan honored him with the Grand Cordon of the Order of the Rising Sun in 2017. Today at OIST, we acknowledge Sidonie's many contributions to science and the world. We are very thankful that he was involved in the early game of our university. Without his influence and the work of our other founders, OIST would not be where it is today. For that, we are truly grateful. You will be in our memories, Sidonie, for all you have achieved for OIST and for the intellectual force that you were in the world. You made history.
Good morning. Please allow me to say a few words in memory of Dr. Sidonie Brenner now. In 2000, when I was Science Technology Minister, I was developing the idea for OIST. I began looking for someone who could help make my vision a reality. I interviewed numerous Nobel laureates, but among all those I met during my search, Dr. Brenner was one of those who responded most strongly to my idea for a graduate university for science and technology. I was highly impressed by his energy and vision, and I knew then that I had found the right person to oversee the long process of establishing OIST. Dr. Brenner successfully made the best in the world concept for OIST a reality, and he continued to provide constructive advice even after he moved to Singapore. I owe him a great deal for his unique vision and strong leadership. He laid the foundation for an institution focusing on science and technology to contribute to humanity's future. As president of the OIST Promotion Corporation from 2005 to 2011, Dr. Brenner worked hard to lay the foundations for today's OIST and create a path for his successors to follow. I think it is fair to say that OIST owed its success to his strong leadership. Dr. Brenner, who enjoyed haiku Japanese poetry, composed a haiku of his own at the press conference announcing the start of OIST. His poem was, "In Okinawa, we see the dawn of a new university." It was an expression of his confidence that the project would be a success. I feel sincere gratitude for the direction Dr. Brenner set for OIST. Being associated with him was an unforgettable experience for me, and he left a proud legacy for OIST. Let us remember him for his invaluable contributions to this institution. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and honorable guests from the world today. My name is Yasushi Otto, Director General of Okinawa Government Bureau. It is my great honor to have a chance to pay tribute to Dr. Sidonie Brenner on behalf of Mitsuhiro Miyakoshi, Minister of State for Okinawa and Northern Territory Affairs. While Mr. Miyakoshi wished to attend today's ceremony, he could not be here because of his official duties. So he gave me his words. As a representative of him, I'd like to express his tribute to the greatest founder of OIST, Dr. Sidonie Brenner. シドニー・ブレナー博士の追悼式が挙行されるにあたり、沖縄振興を担当する内閣府特命担当大臣として謹んで哀悼の言葉を申し述べます。
Today, as we pay tribute to Dr. Sidonie Brenner, I wish to say a few words as the Minister of State responsible for the promotion and development of Okinawa.
はじめに、本日はやむを得ない事情にて出席することがかなわず、お詫びを申し上げます。天に召されました博士のご家族の皆様や、生前博士とご親交のありましたすべての皆様に対し、お悔やみを申し上げますとともに、謹んで個人のご冥福をお祈りいたします。
I regret that I am unable to attend the memorial tribute in person due to unavoidable circumstances. I would like to offer my deepest condolences to Dr. Brenner's family and also to all those who are friends and acquaintances, and pray for the repose of his soul.
ブレナー博士は2002年のノーベル生理学・医学賞受賞に示されるように、世界の超一流の研究者というだけではなく、先見の明や高い見識と教養を持ち合わせておいででした。そして博士は沖縄における大学院大学構想の実現に向け、情熱と強い使命感を持って取り組んでこられました。
Dr. Brenner received the 2002 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. As this indicates, he was a world top-class researcher, and not just that, he had true foresight, vision, and was a highly cultured person. He was passionate and had a strong sense of mission in realizing the creation of a graduate university here in Okinawa.
ブレナー博士には、内閣府の国際顧問会議や評議会に参加いただくなど、大学院大学の根幹となる基本的な理念を作り上げる検討段階から、まさに中心的な役割を果たしていただきました。ブレナー博士は基礎科学の重要性を見据え、新しい大学院大学において、学際的な教育環境や若い世代の研究者が独立した研究を行える環境を作り上げることに情熱を持っておられました。2005年9月に大学院大学の前身となる沖縄科学技術研究基盤整備機構が設立され、初代理事長に就任されると、こうした理念の実現に向けて博士は精力的に取り組まれました。
Dr. Brenner took part in the Cabinet Office's International Advisory Committee and Councils. From the time the basic ideals, which now form the core of the graduate university, were created, he had played a central role. Dr. Brenner understood the importance of basic research, and therefore he enthusiastically promoted interdisciplinary education and research, as well as he endeavors to create an environment where young researchers can independently carry out research at the new graduate school. In September 2005, the predecessor of OIST, which was the OIST Institution of Science and Technology Promotion Corporation, was established. He became the founding president, and since then, he worked energetically to realize the ideals.
多くの優秀な研究者が 博士の理念に共感し、また博士の情熱やお人柄を慕い、世界各地から沖縄にやってまいりました。今日のOISTの礎は、まさに博士によって築かれたものであり、創業の時にブレナー博士という傑出した人物を得ることができたことは、OISTのみならず、沖縄、そして日本にとって非常に幸福なことであったと考えております。
Many leading researchers responded to his ideals. They were attracted by Dr. Brenner's passion and personality and came here to Okinawa. The basis of OIST was truly established by Dr. Brenner. It was a great blessing, not only for OIST, but for Okinawa and Japan, that we had such an outstanding person like Dr. Brenner at the very beginning of OIST.
今、OISTにおいては、分野の壁にとらわれない、また国際的にも開かれた自由な研究環境の中で、さまざまな国、地域から集まった優秀な研究者や学生が相互に活発に交流する中で、創造性を遺憾なく発揮し、独創的な研究に従事しております。そこから生まれた画期的な研究成果は、一流の科学雑誌に取り上げられるなど、OISTは世界から高い期待を集めております。
Now at OIST, we have an environment where research is carried out crossing over different fields and disciplines, open beyond national borders. Brilliant researchers and students from various countries and regions come together here and have active mutual exchange, exerting their creativity to implement in genuine research. The outstanding research outcomes have been published in world-renowned journals. The world has great expectations for OIST.
2002年5月、アメリカのロサンゼルスで開催した第1回国際顧問会議において、ブレナー博士は、沖縄で新大学の夜明けかな。In 沖縄、We see the dawn of new university という俳句を読まれました。まさに夜明けの段階から心血を注がれたブレナー博士のご貢献なくしては、OISTはなかったと言っても過言ではありません。全くの白紙の状態から世界最高水準の教育研究機関を沖縄に創設するという我が国でも前例のない困難な任務を達成するため、博士が歩まれた道のりが平坦でなかったことは想像に難しくありません。改めてブレナー博士のご功績に対し最大限の敬意を表するとともに、心から感謝を申し上げます。
In May 2002, at the Second International Advisory Committee held in Los Angeles, Dr. Brenner read a haiku poem, which goes, "In Okinawa, we see the dawn of a new university." Indeed, from the dawn, Dr. Brenner has put in his heart and soul in establishing OIST, without which OIST would never have become. He worked from scratch to create a world-leading education and research institute in Okinawa. This has been an unprecedented effort in Japan, with many difficulties. We can imagine that the path Dr. Brenner tread was a bumpy one with many twists and turns. I would like to express my utmost respect and my heartfelt appreciation to the tremendous achievement of Dr. Brenner.
ブレナー博士の描かれた理念を守り、また発展させ、OISTが真に世界トップクラスの教育研究機関となることが私たちが願う未来です。沖縄振興を担当する内閣府特命担当大臣として、OISTの輝かしい未来に向けて、本日ここにご参列の皆様をはじめとする関係者の皆様とともに一層尽力していくことを改めてお誓いし、私からの追悼の言葉とさせていただきます。
We must continue on the path upholding the ideals laid out by Dr. Brenner so that OIST can become a world top-class education and research institute. That is the future that we aim for. As the state minister in charge of the promotion and development of Okinawa, I would like to express my resolve to work together with all of you here today and all stakeholders of OIST to realize a bright future for OIST.
ブレナー博士の安らかなご永眠を心からお祈りいたします。令和元年5月26日、内閣府特命担当大臣、沖縄および北方対策、宮越光弘。
Once again, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Brenner. May his soul rest in eternal peace. May 26, 2019, Mitsuhiro Miyakoshi, Minister of State for Okinawa and Northern Territories Affairs.
My name is Tamaki Nagahama. Sorry, I'll speak in Japanese. 沖縄県庁から、OIST の TDIC に来ております。長浜為一と申します。
I am Tameichi Nagahama from the Okinawa Prefectural Government. I currently work at OIST TDIC.
私は、OIST は、今回が2度目になります。2005年10月から、約2年半、整備機構、OIST-PC でシドニー・ブレナー理事長のもと働いておりました。
This is my second time at OIST for 2.5 years from October 2005 when OIST was still the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology Promotion Corporation. I was here working under Dr. Brenner's leadership.
2015年7月にはシンガポールにおいて沖縄県の事務所が開設されたとき、祝賀会場にお見えになったブレナー先生をその場で拝見することもできました。
In July 2015, when the Okinawa Prefectural Office was opened in Singapore, I had the pleasure of seeing Dr. Brenner at the opening party.
玉城デニー知事は本日別の公務があるため、私がメッセージを預かっております。
Fortunately, the Governor, Denny Tamaki, was unable to attend the memorial tribute due to other official engagements, but I have his message with me here.
知事に代わりまして、私自身の誠意も込めて読ませていただきます。
I would like to read out that message as I also express my sincere appreciation for Dr. Brenner.
シドニー・ブレナー博士を偲ぶ会にあたり、謹んで哀悼の誠を捧げ、ご冥福をお祈り申し上げます。
Today at the memorial tribute for Dr. Sidonie Brenner, I would like to offer my sincerest condolences and prayers for his soul.
ブレナー博士は2005年から2011年にかけて、沖縄科学技術大学院大学 OIST の前身となる沖縄科学技術研究基盤整備機構の理事長を務められ、OIST 設立に向けご尽力なさいました。
Dr. Brenner served from 2005 to 2011 as the president of the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology Promotion Corporation, which is the predecessor of OIST. He contributed greatly towards the opening of OIST.
そのご功績は現在のOIST発展の礎となっております。
Through his many achievements, he laid the foundation of the success of OIST today.
当時、ブレナー博士はOISTの組織体制や研究分野などを先頭に立って議論・検討されるとともに、県民に対してOISTが持つ可能性を熱心に紹介し、OIST設立に向けた機運を高められるなど、さまざまな形でご尽力いただきました。
Back then, Dr. Brenner led the discussions on what the OIST organization should look like, what themes it should take up. He explained to the Okinawan people the potential OIST has for Okinawa with passion, and he pushed the momentum towards the creation of OIST in many different ways.
このようなブレナー博士の存在は、沖縄県の科学技術振興にも大きな影響を与えており、遺伝子研究設備の充実や研究人材の高度化など、今日の沖縄のバイオサイエンス研究基盤の確立は 当時、ブレナー博士がまいた種が着実に成果を上げつつあることの証左であります。
Dr. Brenner had great influence on the promotion of science and technology in Okinawa, the enhancement of genetic research facilities, and the nurturing of researchers through the establishment of a bioscience research foundation in Okinawa are truly the fruits of the seeds sown by Dr. Brenner.
沖縄県としましては、ブレナー博士のご尽力により築かれた沖縄の科学技術の発展がさらなる進化をなすよう、より一層取り組んでいくことをお誓い申し上げます。
We in Okinawa shall take the development of science technology in Okinawa, which was established by the hard efforts of Dr. Brenner, a step further, and we are resolved to continue the initiatives he has started.
結びに、ブレナー博士のその偉業に対し、145万沖縄県民を代表して、心からの尊敬と感謝を捧げますとともに、謹んでご冥福をお祈り申し上げ、追悼の言葉といたします。
On behalf of the 1.45 million Okinawa citizens, I would like to express once again my deepest respect and gratitude for the great achievements of Dr. Brenner and offer my prayers for the repose of his soul.
令和元年5月26日、沖縄県知事、玉城デニー。
May 26, 2019, Governor of Okinawa, Denny Tamaki.
代読でございました。Thank you very much.
I first met Sidonie Brenner, encountered him, I should say, in my final year as an undergraduate in Cambridge. And I last saw him in January 2018. During these 54 years, I met him many times in many different situations. But there was one thing absolutely constant from first to last. Sidonie was the most articulate, the most entertaining, the most consistently interesting lecturer it has ever been my privilege to hear. He was well aware of this himself and wrote in one of his loose ends monthly columns, quote, "The best way to survive in science, as in other walks of life, is to make people laugh. Because laughter registers impact with the greatest efficiency. Risibility is closely related to visibility." Sidonie loved jokes and puns. He defined avocado's number, of course, as the number of molecules in a guacamole. But Sidonie was a very serious scientist, a seriously good, one must say brilliant scientist, and one of the giants of his generation of biologists. But he came from the humblest of origins in South Africa. And like Francis Crick, his father made and repaired shoes. But whereas Sidonie's father was illiterate, though he spoke many languages, Sidonie taught himself to read at the age of 4, and from then on read voraciously. He entered medical school in Johannesburg at the age of 15 and published his first Nature paper at the age of 18. Attending medical school taught him that basic biological research was where his true calling lay, rather than being a doctor, and he was already studying chromosomes for his master's thesis, another Nature paper, age 20, as this time as sole author. In his early days, he loved chemistry and making dyes to stain biological samples. So through connections in the university, he went to do his DPhil in Oxford. He said he wrote to Cambridge, but they didn't reply to my letter. And started to work on bacteriophage, convincing his supervisor of the reality of mutations by repeating the Luria-Delbruck experiment. Friends of his in Oxford knew of Watson and Crick and the DNA structure, and so a small party, including Sidonie, went to see it for themselves, which was a revelation and love at first sight for Sidonie, because he realized in a flash that biology had, at least for a while, been reduced from 4 dimensions to 1. Here was the instantiation of Turing and von Neumann's self-reproducing automaton with DNA as the tape. But how did DNA specify the organism? Jim Watson had it first, according to Francis Crick. DNA makes RNA, makes protein. But it was Sidney Brenner whose reading and prodigious memory first, if only by a few seconds, realized that ribosomes were programmed by messenger RNA. At the time, people imagined that every ribosome made a different kind of protein, although it was a little bit odd that all the ribosomes were exactly the same size. So Sidonie went to Caltech to see if old ribosomes were associated with new phage RNA after infection, and after a few tricky setbacks, they did. Another paper to Nature. That was in 1960, about 5 years after he started sharing an office with Francis Crick in Cambridge. And arguably, Sidonie's most brilliant work came shortly after that as people struggled to decipher the genetic code. Quote, armed only with toothpicks and logic, unquote. He and Francis established that mRNA was read in units of 3 bases at a time, and that 3 of these 64 codons, the word was Sidonie's coinage, specified protein chain termination: AMBER, UAG, OCA, UAA, and UGA. I was lucky enough to hear the seminar at which Sidonie first explained these results. It was an absolute tour de force. And much later, he himself said quite accurately that this was brilliant work. No false modesty. But what do you do next? The genetic code was one thing, but how did the DNA specify cells and organisms? So in 1966, Sidonie spent the summer in Woods Hole, mostly buried in the library, where he discovered, by reading, a little nematode worm that was easy to grow and easy to use for genetic experiments. He decided to work out its nervous system using a combination of electron microscopy and genetics. Behavioral mutants proved easy to find, although most of them affected muscles rather than their brains. But it took 20 years to make a complete map of the 302 nerve cells and their connections. And in fact, we still don't understand how it works, how the worm wriggles. Forwards in response to food, backwards when it meets something it doesn't like. But meanwhile, Sidonie hosted a succession of brilliant young scientists and just let them get on with it. He thereby established a whole new field and made the study of worms not just respectable, but very attractive and highly successful. As you well know, the Nobel Prize for 2002 was awarded to Sidonie Brenner, Bob Horowitz, and John Solston, quote, for their discoveries concerning genetic regulation of organ development and programmed cell death. Not what they set out to do, but arguably their most important discovery. Of course, Sidonie should have had a prize long before that for his work on messenger RNA and the code, but life and prizes aren't fair. Sidonie had always been fond of computers, as Peter mentioned, and taught himself how to program the computer they used to reconstruct the nervous system using machine language. He believed, quote, that in biology, programmatic explanations will be algorithmic explanations. You will have to say, next switch on gene group number 58, and then you'll have to work out what gene group 58 is and what it does, unquote. So in his final years, he studied the flood of DNA sequences that started to be available, trying to understand how complexity is gained in the course of evolution. And I'd like to end the story of this remarkable genius in his own words, which were published earlier this year. Quote, the fundamental property of living organisms is the invention of computing with DNA. Our main conclusion from studying the history of genomes is that all the major changes, from prokaryotes to eukaryotes, from unicellular to multicellular, from water to land, from invertebrates to vertebrates, from apes to humans, are the products of lucky accidents that could not have been predicted. Otherwise, only randomness is exploited. That is why evolution takes so much time and why degeneracy and extinction are so common. This is also the underlying theme that links the chronicles of evolution. May he rest in peace.
As you have heard, Sidonie made many major contributions. And I'm going to discuss Sidonie's role here in the creation of OIST. And as I was preparing today, I have a black Karyushi. But as I thought about it, I said, no, it's not appropriate. So let me tell you a little bit about my personal experience over several years with Sidonie. I'd like to start by saying that this OIST was not his first involvement with the Japanese research community. As Akito Arima told us earlier in other events, Sidonie was invited as a member of the first independent review of the physics department at the University of Tokyo in 1993. This introduced the practice of external review of academic programs, and it has had a profound influence ever since. Sidonie was a founder and contributor to the prestigious Hamamatsu Photonics Company's annual imaging workshops and a collaborator on several genomic initiatives and other programs in Japan. Before OIST, he was involved with an effort to start a new research-based university on the mainland of Japan, but it failed to get off the ground. He understood well the challenges of doing new things within the established structure of Japan, and thus he was a natural advisor for the early conceptual discussions concerning OIST. Under Mr. Omi's guidance, after several years of planning, including creation of the framework document, in 2005, the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology Promotion Corporation received legal status from the Diet. Sidonie was appointed as president, as we've heard. Under Prime Minister Koizumi, OIST was identified as a national priority of the government. Sidonie emphasized the importance of establishing cutting-edge research immediately. And well-equipped temporary prefab laboratories were built in Uruma, about 20 kilometers south of here. From the start, Sidonie insisted on effective implementation of the key principles in the framework, that is, to be interdisciplinary with no departments, where research units, even with first-time PIs, would independently manage their research and budgets, and research resources would be shared. He emphasized the importance of establishing what he called pinnacles of excellence. And he, even with the first few laboratories here, genomic analysis was an area where he showed that OIST could quickly become a match or exceed the capabilities of many of the best university laboratories in the world. As you will hear in the next talk from Dan Roxer, OIST has been able to become firmly established in cutting-edge genetics. As the laboratory buildings were designed, Sidonie was emphatic that they should be built to foster interaction and sharing, and that the buildings should have a character that would be striking and stimulating. A conceptual campus plan for 300 faculty units was developed, which is still the overall model for the campus today. But the challenges of establishing OIST went far beyond building the research campus. Sidonie had an extraordinary ability to convey a realistic vision of creating an institution from nothing. This is quite different from building up or expanding an existing institution. This skill was essential in enlisting the support of the Okinawan community, as we've heard, and as well as politicians and bureaucrats in Tokyo to join together to work on behalf of OIST. Honestly, this was particularly true when the opposition political party, the Democratic Party of Japan, came into power from the period 2009 to 2012. During this period, Sidonie's skills were critical in maintaining the growth of OIST. In 2012, the LDP under Prime Minister Abe came back into power, and with Mr. Omi's assistance, the full pace of growth at OIST was restored. Sidonie was deeply committed to fostering the intellectual confidence of young scientists, with special focus on protecting their independence. His creation in the OIST PC of the independent new investigator positions laid the groundwork for the introduction of assistant professors in the university with independent labs and the ability to supervise graduate students. This independence for assistant professors was previously not possible in Japan. He was generous to young researchers, not only with support, but also with ideas. He gave insights and suggestions to help advance their research. His interest in encouraging young people extended to children. With others, he supported the establishment of a children's summer school of science for OIST and our local community, which has become a key element in our relations with Onasan. This summer, the Onasan OIST Children's School of Science will celebrate its 10th anniversary. But Sidonie had another remarkable career that may be less well known for many, and that is as a successful entrepreneur in technology transfer. He had more than 400 patents and was the sole inventor on many, for which he wrote the claims. These include massively parallel DNA sequencing, multiplex DNA sequence analysis and barcoding for quantitative analysis of DNA polymorphisms for genotyping, DNA-coded libraries, and many others. He was involved with the founding of several biotechnology companies, including CombiChem, Lynx Therapeutics, Population Genetic Technologies, Acidophil and its spin-outs. He was also a key advisor to several companies and investment partnerships, including Rothschilds, DuPont, Forward Ventures, Red Abbey Venture Partners, and many others. Sidonie knew that the success of OIST depends on successful technology transfer of discoveries from its labs. He insisted that OIST have an outstanding technology transfer capability, which led to the establishment of the OIST Technology Development and Innovation Center. So I find that it's actually easy to talk about Sidonie's accomplishments, but unless you actually met him, it's very difficult to grasp his fascinating personality that we've heard about. So, and I realize that many in the audience have not met him, and I've therefore selected a brief piece of video in which he explains where he thinks biology will be in 30 or 50 years. And I think it will give you a feeling for why he was so important in leading the way for OIST. A little clue, pay attention to the eyebrows.
So what about the future? How do you see, let's say, your subject in, I don't know, 30 or 50 years' time? Do you think they're going to be new principles or just going to be detailed? I don't know.
Well, you're asked to see how the subject will be in 30 years' time. I think that the two things that will happen is, the three things that will happen will be the following. I think evolution will become an experimental subject, which will be wonderful. I think with that sort of knowledge, we will even start to make new animals. Perhaps I once gave a lecture on how to make a centaur. by means other than transplantation surgery, which is the way the Greeks made centaurs. And what you would have to know in terms of developmental biology to create a six-limbed vertebrate, because that's what centaurs are. But I think we will move on towards, I think, synthetic biology. I think also that in terms of, so I think evolution is going to be the subject over the next 25 years. I think there are going to be amazing discoveries that are going to tell us quite a lot about the past. And I think we're actually going to recapitulate the past. And that, I think, will be the most exciting thing. And I think it'll bring a new kind of synthetic approach to the subject, which is now just being carved into smaller and smaller pieces. I think that in terms of the understanding of, I think the big subject that will develop, and the subject that will have to be reinvented, is physiology. So that is, nobody knows how to connect up all these molecular events to the actual functioning of an organism or an organ system. So I think physiology will have to be reinvented so that we can grasp how all this molecular stuff is embedded in the function of an organism. And of course, the physiology that'll be the most interesting will be the physiology of the brain. There's a tremendous discussion now on neurobiology and its theory and what is consciousness and so on. And I think a lot of this discussion will just, all the way people are talking about it will vanish. You see, I'm one of the people who believes the brain is a gland which excretes thoughts. And roughly speaking, we have to, find out how this excretion is carried out. And I think we'll get this. And so I think that's going to be a remark, but that's trite. But the subject I think that's going to be very interesting, which the new biology will open up, is in fact the understanding of ourselves as organisms. I think for the first time we can attack the fundamental biology of man. And I see even now the beginnings of trying to understand our evolution and our history and our culture and in terms of our biology as one thing. So I think the great dream of the human sciences will be realized in the near future, because we can just, and if it is correct that the genome still retains evidence of past history, we should be able to recreate history beyond the written word and integrate it with us. So I think there will be more of that science.
Now, to emphasize a point that's been repeated many times today, Sidonie was a person with vision. And just to make the point, the video that we just saw seems like it was made yesterday. It was actually made 25 years ago. And so now we will hear from Dan Roxer next about some of the examples of what Sidonie actually accomplished with things here at OIST. So thank you very much.
When Sidonie lectured, he lectured completely without slides. All eyes were on him, and he just spoke in paragraphs. I can't do that, and I think I have something better for you to look at anyway. So you've heard about Sidonie's legendary career and his contributions to science and the scientific institutions that he's helped set up, including OIST. My task today is to tell you a little bit about the science that he inspired and is still inspiring at OIST. And I think he would view this as the ultimate tribute. I had the great privilege to meet Sidonie in 2001. At the time, I was a physicist who had moved into biology in a kind of an idiosyncratic way and was involved in the Human Genome Project. And he wanted to sequence the genome of a pufferfish, fugu. To this point, only a few animal genomes had actually been sequenced. C. elegans, the worm that we heard about, Drosophila, and the human genome was underway as a huge effort. And he came to us at the Department of Energy and said, I want to sequence this. It's the smallest vertebrate genome. And so, therefore, it will be a genome that we can sequence at a discount. He called it the discount genome. And we'll learn everything we need to know about vertebrates. We can do it faster and better than the human. And so it was actually the fourth genome that was sequenced, soon followed by the mouse, which was another big effort, and then the sea squirt genome, which was carried out in collaboration with Norisato and Mike Levine. This is a picture of the Fugu group with Sidonie here, and Venki and Sam Aparicio. Here is me in the back. And this was a really interdisciplinary team. Sidonie didn't care where you came from, whether you were a biologist or a technologist or an engineer. And so the people that were involved in this came from all different areas. He was really passionate about that. And I think that's something that we see here at OIST. The appreciation for the different things that people from different backgrounds could bring. Not many people outside this group were convinced that it was worth sequencing this animal that we knew so little about as an animal. Right? We knew about it as a food, but not as a living system. But Sidonie had the insight that it didn't matter. If your question was to understand the evolution of genomes and the structure of genomes, you should choose the right organism to solve that problem, or to begin to solve that problem, and that fugu was the right way to go. And I think this kind of motivation, picking the right organism, is a thread that runs throughout his career. He wants to solve a problem, but he needs to pick the right sequence, the right system. This is not Sidonie's picture is not from the Nobel lecture, but the quote is. And the title of his lecture, it's a beautiful note that you can read. I have a long set of links to Sidonie's writings and the interviews that you just heard, one from Bob. We'll post that on the OIST website. The title of my lecture is Nature's Gift to Science. It's about how the great diversity of the living world can both inspire and serve innovation in biological research. This is not just a quick word. Sidonie read really deeply all aspects of biology. I would often come to him with something that I had learned about some strange animal that I thought was interesting, and he would then say, oh, of course, and then he would go on and tell me more. Right? He knew everything. But this idea that the great diversity of the world is important in understanding the diversity of biology and the functioning of biology is really something that we've taken to heart here at OIST. And this is a sampling. I couldn't fit them all on. This is a sampling of the organisms whose genomes OIST scientists have been involved with sequencing. And then taking that sequence and going on to really understand the biology that's encoded in this one-dimensional sequence. So a lot of this is from the work of Norisato's lab and my unit, but many other units, the Luscombe unit, the Bourguignon unit, Economo, Mikheyev, other units are participating in this grand effort to really understand the diversity of life, not just at the genome level, but then to push forward. At the top of these are two genomes that we were in the process of discussing with Sidonie. This is the hagfish and the bowfin. And pretty much every day I think, I wish I could talk to him about this. I wish I could tell him what we're learning. Sidonie loved to talk. You've heard a little bit about it. That's sort of the way he was. You would sit him down and he would just speak with the eyebrows going and the smile that you knew something clever was coming, that he had planned maybe hours in advance. He wove insights and jokes and puns and advice in this kind of hypnotizing stream of thoughts. And it's fortunate there is this rich set of video recordings. Unfortunately, they're all from the last 25 years. So if there's any way, I'd love to hear this lecture that you heard about the stop codons. That's sort of lost, I think, except in people's heads. But he did write, as we heard, this set of advice columns and commentary called Loose Ends. This is available now, and again, we'll put the link on the OIST website. This is available as an ebook from Current Biology. And they were organized in different ways. They were advice to his young nephew. They were the seven sins. And this one was about avarice, and it doesn't really fit here, but this I like this quote. I wanted to be a scientist because I had an insatiable hunger for knowledge. You can think of Sidonie as a boy of 10 years old or 5 years old thinking about science at home in South Africa. Not for me, the fox who knows a little bit about many things, nor the hedgehog who knows a lot about one thing. I wanted to be something like an octopus with tentacles everywhere and know everything about everything. And it continues, but I didn't want to. It's hard to know when to stop quoting Sidonie. And so, Sidonie obviously had an affinity for the octopus. This is an illustration that went with that note. And what's missing here are the eyebrows. It would be great. But it shows Sidonie reading and programming computers and working with his plates of bacteriophage and worms and looking in microscopes and writing, reading, tapes, everything. So Sidonie cared about the octopus, and this was the way that I re-encountered him at OIST in the winter course that Norisato organized in 2009, I believe, was when we met. And one of the things we talked about was the octopus and how the octopus genome would give us insight into what he called the first intelligent animal on the planet, hundreds of millions of years before humans. And so this was a project we started even before I came to OIST, and it led to I think a nice publication, but more importantly, sort of insights into how you could think about how this very different kind of intelligence might be encoded in its genome. And that's something that's more of a scientific discussion, but I think this is something that has now seeded the work of lots of researchers at OIST and around the world, trying to really understand, it's sort of open the door to be able to think about this as another complex system. But that's a big leap, right, from the one-dimensional sequence of this genome to the living, functioning, behaving animal. And this chain of causality, as you've heard, from one-dimensional sequence, from the genes, to cells, to networks, to systems, to computation, to development. This was one of Sidonie's grand obsessions. He knew very clearly that these were all entangled with each other, that it was hard to separate, and that was the big challenge. In his Nobel lecture, he says, behavior is the result of a complex, ill-understood set of computations performed by nervous systems. And there's a lot of things embedded then in that statement. And this is another area that I think OIST has really embraced and focused on. Even just in the context of the nematode worm, Sidonie's small metazoan that he tamed. So this is a picture that illustrates a paper that just came out from the Wickens and Murayama units about the function of this one neuron. And we know that this one neuron, it's a neuron that's involved in taste in the worm. We know how it's connected. We know where it lives. We know the genes that are expressed in it. How is it functioning? How is it contributing to the behavior of the organism? This is what the Wickens and Murayama recent paper is about. Greg Stevens' unit has come from the other direction. Right? We have to meet in the middle and understand how this all works. Thinking about the collective modes, more from a physics kind of angle, the collective modes of the functioning of this worm. What is the readout at the organismal level? And this is just in the terms of the worm. I think many different units at OIST are thinking about computation and how computation is executed within the nervous system, both as a way of understanding nervous systems and as a way of inspiring useful computation, as we heard several of Kenji's students yesterday at graduation. So with C. elegans and fugu and other organisms that he studied throughout his life and promoted, Sidonie knew that the right organism, you need to find the right organism to study each question. And so one of the things that my unit has been doing is looking to find, maybe not as elegant an animal as C. elegans, but an organism that we can easily work with that could give us access to the cephalopod biology. And so the unit has been sampling sites around the Ryukyu Islands, and we're finding incredible diversity, including several new species. And so this is again, I wish it had eyebrows. But this is a new species of bobtail squid that we found that is local to Okinawa, and we're in the process of formally naming it after Sidonie. I think he would be pleased. Sidonie used to come to OIST often, and he would come to Berkeley. He would basically say, I'm arriving on such and such a date, let's meet. And it was incredibly exciting to have the opportunity to talk to him. In his later years, as his medical conditions prevented him from traveling, he was some people say marooned or confined to quarters in Singapore. He lived in a hotel called the Shangri-La Hotel, which gives you a sense of the sense in which he was marooned. And he was still active. He was always thinking. And our meetings would usually, in the morning, we would sit and talk about science, and then we'd have a little bit of lunch, and he would take a break, and then in the evening, we would meet for drinks and then dinner, usually with other groups from Singapore, other visitors who were there. And after the evenings, the dinners were all about the jokes and history. I would always try to find a way to squeeze out a little bit more about this early history that we've thought of. But the mornings were always about science. And these are some pictures I took. I was always uncomfortable taking pictures of Sidonie because I just felt that it was the wrong thing to do. So some of these were taken kind of without his knowledge. But he had two kind of great obsessions. One of them was thinking about, as you just heard in the video clip, how genomes tell us about the past. And he was also obsessed with reading the human genome in an idiosyncratic way that he had. And what you're looking at here is one page of several binders where he had, in his way, read through the whole human genome. And these different colors, I don't know what they all mean. But it was really trying to understand the global organization of the genome. And some of this is his manual work of things that we were doing in parallel with global computational analysis. This is something that he was doing uniquely himself, and I have some videos of him working on this. This is an analysis, as Tim mentioned, he learned to program himself in machine language, and he still worked in this old computer language that he had somebody write a compiler for so he could continue to program in his own language. And he would then write down the results of his calculations in these big notebooks. And he just loved to sort of stare at the data. And what's remarkable about this, and it would be a whole other lecture, I'm sure I'm already over time, is that it was all about codons. And it was remarkable to see Sidonie struggle with these codons and the way codons were different in different organisms and how they were distributed within an organism. Because, as you heard, codons were his invention, right? He was or discovery. He was the one who first understood that there were codons and named the codon. And so this was all, it was a combination of kind of a familiar adversary and then an old friend who still had mysteries that he was trying to solve. So, I miss him. It was incredibly exciting to talk to him. He was always enthusiastic. He was always supportive of the new things we were doing. He always had some insight, some suggestion. Towards the end, Sidonie was fond of saying this. He said this to many people. This particular version of it is from Sean Hoon in Singapore. He said, in 2053, from wherever I'll be, I just want a single day of furlough where I can come back to see how far we've come. And he was always, looking at you when he said this, how far you've come. Well, we know today that we didn't know before, and then I'll go back. This 2053 is not a random number. It's the 100th anniversary of the discovery of the structure of DNA, Sidney's mind-altering vision, the flash of insight. And so our mission is clear. We have to attack science the way he taught us and make discoveries that will delight him when he comes back. Thank you.
Well, we are gathered here this morning to celebrate, honor, and remember Dr. Sidonie Brenner. As you have heard, if you had not known him before, a remarkable scientist, an incredible intellect, and quite an interesting human being. You've just heard about his stellar career and accomplishments, and his research and his personality, including his eyebrows. He was one among a truly outstanding group of, let's just call them geniuses in the world. I want to focus today and bring you back. You have heard much about it, but the importance of Sidonie Brenner to OIST and the establishment of this incredible university. He was among the truly outstanding group of Japanese and international advisors who were established in 2001 by Mr. Koji Omi, then Minister of State. And earlier you saw some of the videos of that group of advisors who were meeting in Tokyo and then in Okinawa. They included, as well as Sidonie, Dr. Akito Arima, Dr. Torsten Wiesel, Dr. Jerry Friedman, Dr. Susumu Tonegawa, Dr. Yuan T. Lee, Dr. Steve Chu, and Dr. Hiroko Sho. 6 of those had Nobel Prizes. Through many meetings and discussions, a group of advisors identified the key elements for the charter of the university. In 2003, they were assembled with Sidonie's great input into the proposed framework. This formed the basis for the Diet to pass the Independent Administrative Institution Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology Promotion Corporation Act, and it defined the mechanism by which the university would be built. First, a promotion corporation was created. The advisory group became the Board of Governors, and Sidonie became the first president of the, and only, president of the Promotion Corporation. This was, as you have heard before, this was an incredible effort to start from nothing and to grow a world-class university. They designed and, first of all, had to find where the campus was to be located, then designed and built the campus and hired the first researchers and administrators. And the caliber of Sidonie's leadership started the caliber of the organization. By 2009, the progress was judged to be sufficient that the Diet passed a new act, the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology School Corporation Act. This enabled the Promotion Corporation to prepare extensive documentation required to apply to the Ministry of Education for accreditation. In 2011, the accreditation was approved. And the operational part of the university started. Recruiting was permitted to start for the first students, and they arrived in 2012. Dr. Brenner served as president from 2005 to 2011. As you have heard before, and you might imagine, he overcame the tremendous challenge of convincing everyone, from political supporters, the Diet, the federal government in Tokyo, the Okinawa prefecture, the public, and the researchers themselves to believe that a beautiful but empty hillside in Onasan in a little more than a decade would hold an emerging world-class university. He set up his own research lab during this time, and you could see that he continued his research until the very end of his life. Recognizing his immense contribution to launching this international research university, he was awarded the Grand Cordon of the Order of the Rising Sun in 2017 by the Japanese government. Sidonie's personal generosity enabled the first scholarship fund to support tuition and research expenses of OIST students, and the first support to enable both philanthropic fundraising and, as we heard, entrepreneurial technology development at OIST. He was generous in many ways with his untiring curiosity, creation of several new research fields, as you heard, institutes all over the world, mentoring of young scientists. I quote from his autobiography a phrase that sums up his philosophy well. I believe that a scientist should be judged by the quality of the people he has helped to produce and not by the prizes or other honors bestowed on him. Thus, Dr. Brenner's legacy lives on in his creation of OIST and its generations of students in the future.
We have received the following message from Yuriko Koike, the governor of Tokyo, which we would like to share with you. As president of the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology Promotion Corporation, Dr. Brenner devoted himself to the establishment of the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology Graduate University, which serves as a hub for cutting-edge research and human resources development, and greatly contributed to the advancement of science and technology and the development of Okinawa. As a former Minister of State for Okinawa and Northern Territories Affairs, please allow me to honor Dr. Brenner's achievement and convey my heartfelt sympathy. Yuriko Koike, Governor of Tokyo. We also received flowers from the President and Chief Executive Officer of Okinawa Building Maintenance Corporation, Hitoshi Kochi. Thank you very much for the beautiful flowers.
So we were thinking what we can do to assure that Sidonie will stay in our memory, and not just in our memory, but in the memory of the many generations of scientists that we expect will go through this university and should be reminded as to what Sidonie was doing for all of us. And we came up with naming this lecture hall the Sidonie Brenner Lecture Theatre. So with that, I think that